Welcome to Highly Sensitive, Happily Married, the podcast that teaches you to not only have an easier marriage as a sensitive woman, but to have one that feels more amazing by the day. Where you'll hear relatable stories, love advice that works, and coaching on how to have a marriage where feeling upset and disconnected is a thing of the past, and where instead a sense of loving connection and even fun and lightness is the norm. I'm Hannah Brooks, highly sensitive person, love expert, and marriage coach, and I'm so happy to be on this journey with you. All right, well, welcome, Lauren, to the podcast. I'm so happy to have you here. Yeah, you're just such an example of what's possible. And I've been inspired by you and the big changes you've made in yourself and in your relationship and actually like in your whole life during our time together. It's been such a beautiful thing to watch. And I knew it would be really inspiring and really fun for other people to hear your story.
Wow. Thank you so much, Hannah. That was a really inspiring welcome. And it's just been the best part of the last year. It has been getting to work with you and grow and really embody the work and feel so much better. So thank you for having me.
Of course. Yes. So I wanted to just start off. One of the things that you have described lately, that you've been describing your partner or your relationship with your partner as is a safe space, right? Like that he is like your safe space and what you termed your dream incubator. And I love that so much. It's like more than just like a happy relationship, right? And so I'm just curious, like how else you would describe your relationship with him these days.
I love that. Yeah, I have just been feeling our relationship has this sense of calm, groundedness, safety, really feeling like a team. And, in its best moments, like you said, feeling like a dream incubator where we can co-create a life vision together and share ideas about what we're each desiring and longing to do and work on, whether that's in our relationship or in our professional lives. And that, I think, is the ultimate expression of our love and security in our relationship, is when you feel safe enough to dream together. And that is really a dream come true for me. And it's just been beautiful to sort of exist in that space together and see how it's really blossomed, especially since getting to work with you.
Yeah, that's so beautiful. I love that so much. I think, that's like you said, like it's one of the ultimate expressions of like, I don't know, say the word ideal relationship is that it's like, it is like this foundational space, right? It's this loving, safe foundational space from which you can go on and explore like those other parts of yourself and your lives that you're dreaming of, right? And then be able to come back to that like harbor that's there for both of you, between both of you.
Right, exactly. It's like, I imagine having a little hub, of our home where we come back to. We definitely spend a lot more time at the hub currently during quarantine times, and then getting to go out into the world and make change and come back and share that. And it's like the impact you can have is greater than alone. And it's like a collaboration almost. It's a really awesome feeling, even though we each individually are doing different things in the world. But the sense of good feelings from within. And I think this really all started from feeling more connected to myself and just seeing how that really led to more connection in my relationship. And that's been one of the biggest changes I've sensed, is having a more holistic understanding of my emotions and knowing how to express them and feel safe about them.
Yes.
So that's been just, I wish that for every woman. I wish that for my younger self. It makes me feel like I just want to give my like early 20s, mid 20s self a big hug for really, I'm choking up right now just thinking about that. How we can, especially as women, weaponize our feelings or feel like they are weaponized against us, and how it's okay to have deep feelings. It's beautiful. And it can provide such insight and information for us if we know how to investigate that and how to comfort ourselves. So
I feel you. Yes.
Didn't expect to get emotional this early on in the interview, Hannah. What's happening? The highly sensitive.
Yeah, it's our beautiful, highly deep feeling selves.
Just showing have a way. Just feel so comfortable.
Yeah. Oh, I love it so much. And it just like your fundamental shifts, which we'll get more into detail about, but like, it's been so much of what you said earlier, like this really different, much more loving relationship with yourself. That's, it's even allowed, like what you're just saying right now, it's even allowed you to like look back at your past self with so much like compassion and love. And it's amazing to see these shifts. It sort of shifts everything in your life. So thank you for even just allowing those tears right here. It's touching.
Well, thank you.
Yeah. So I mean, what you're saying, what you're expressing is so different from when we first started our work together. You were much more in that struggle with your emotions, right? Like they were heavy and hard for you to be with. And there was, there was even like sort of a deeper sort of insecurity. And I know you were questioning yourself a lot, and you were questioning the relationship a lot. So I'm just curious, like from your perspective, how were those kind of heavier emotions showing up, and how were they affecting like your relationship?
Gosh, it was pretty much a year ago when we started working together. And I remember the weight I was carrying around at the time of ultimately, I think, insecurity in myself. And that led to feeling insecure in parts of my relationship, which led to feeling shame and embarrassment about that. And then not ultimately showing up as in the way that I wanted to show up in the relationship. And I think also from that mindset of insecurity, it led me to be looking for evidence that things were going wrong in the relationship. And, confirmation bias suggests that you find what you're looking for.
Yep.
And I think sort of the rotten cherry on top was I also am quite adept at catastrophizing as well. So, all of these weighty emotions would easily swirl up and just end up spiraling. And, the sense that something's wrong in the relationship, or that something's wrong with me or with my partner, all becomes very confusing when you're allowing your thoughts to spiral. And it for me, it made me end up feeling like I was anxious about the next time we would experience a conflict together, because I didn't have the confidence that I, or, my partner or I could fully navigate that together. And then you are sort of waiting for the other shoe to drop. You're waiting for the next conflict to come around, and that led to some anxiety. So I was really feeling burdened. And, I remember telling you at the time, it felt like there was some timeline, like a decision I had to make, like, okay, we need to figure this out by this date, or this, arbitrary imaginary date, or else. And I'm sure you recall me showing up, putting a lot of pressure on myself.
Yeah. And also on your partner, right? Inadvertently, because it's like, it was sort of like, if it can't get better quick, right? If we keep having conflict and all these upsets, and, it's no good. Right.
Right.
And I mean, I think what you carried around with you, and you tell me where I'm wrong, but really like this sense of like the relationship's in danger, right? The relationship's fragile.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. And, I was very fragile in that moment too. And I think really looking for validation, and looking for, externally, really looking for, things that I could hold on to, and ultimately that I think made me feel more needy, and I sort of hesitate using that word, because I think there's nothing wrong at all with having needs in a relationship, and having our own needs ultimately need to be met. But I think a lot of women listening probably know that feeling of asking themselves, am I being too needy? Does my partner think I'm being asking for too much from them, or not enough? How can I feel more secure in this relationship?
Yeah.
And really, when we started working together, I was so intrigued at first and caught off guard, but in the best way possible, that the work really started with, myself, and with self-care and rest and play and all of these things that didn't feel immediately helpful, but ultimately were the biggest thing that I needed. I think so many women these days need to give themselves in order to feel their needs being met.
I love it. Yeah. I mean, there's one of the things, one of the ways I've put it, and the language we've used together, is so often there's this thing that we all kind of do, most of us do to some degree or another, which is really outsourcing, right? It's like our value comes from something outside of us, right? Our needs get met by something outside of us. And we forget that we have so much capacity to, help ourselves feel, like you said, like, that with the self-care and so many other things that we dove into together, but that really, like, I want to say, shore us up and make us feel full, right? From more from within. And it sort of does take away that sort of neediness, as you put it. So I'm curious, before we kind of get into that a little bit more, do you have, like, can you remember a specific example, or do you have just sort of some specific examples about how you were sort of seeking that validation and that value and that approval kind of from outside of you, or how that neediness showed up?
Just one example, I think, of how I was outsourcing validation was ultimately not showing up in a conflict situation with quote unquote clean feelings, where I thought I was showing up vulnerably, expressing my emotions, but they were really laden with some need to hear a certain response from my partner in order to feel better about myself, better about whatever situation led us to sort of this conflict. And that would lead us in sort of a conflict pattern of, where I would respond in a more, emotional, intense way. And my partner is sort of on the other end of the spectrum in responding in a more stoic way. Which
paint a quick picture of that. I think that would be helpful.
Yeah. Well, so, when he responds in a more stoic way, or in what I perceive to be sort of the cool, calm, collected, but for me, I interpret it as the disconnected, not loving me fully. I did something wrong. That would make me feel, essentially like he was withdrawing from me. And for him, my more emotional, and I should maybe explain that a little bit more so that, I don't confuse having, all types of emotions as being bad. But I think I would basically come into a conflict with, a lot of intensity still, because I hadn't really processed my feelings yet, and would say something that would essentially be a controlling statement.
Yes. Right.
And so, and that's not, if only we could, I know you've joked about this before too. If only we could control our partners. It's like a recovering, control addict.
Exactly.
We're never going to get that we'll often get the opposite reaction we desire when we try to control. And that's exactly what would happen in these situations where, we both would have our different responses, and our different reactions to each other's responses based on our own interpretations of what was going on, and our own layers of insecurity and emotion on top of that. And ultimately, we learned a lot more about each other's response style, which led to, which involved a de-escalated, calm, loving setting to create that environment, to have that conversation. And that led to such a greater understanding and appreciation, even, and compassion for each other's responses.
Ooh, I love it. So I'm going to pause you there for a second. I love that so much, and I want to hear more about that. I do want to just kind of go back for a second and just sort of say in my own words a little bit of what you were just saying, bringing it back to feeling valued and, seeking that, outsourcing that approval, outsourcing that belief in yourself, really like wanting him to show up a certain way with you so that you could feel good about yourself. Right. Mm-hmm. And that's that's why in the beginning there, those conflicts and those moments with him would be so charged. So there was a lot of attachment there in you, right? For him being a certain way so that you could feel better about yourself. Right. And I think that's always for so many of us, that's where that control piece comes in, is it's like, we're trying to control our own feelings by controlling how our partner acts.
Yes.
Right. Right. And I always just kind of joke about, well, there's a much better way. There's a shortcut, right? We don't have to do all that work and actually create all that backfiring and escalated conflict by trying to control our partner. We can learn how to control what's going on in our own internal world and feel good about ourselves ahead of time, without needing to control our partner, right? Or rely on our partner's behavior or be so attached to how they act or what they say, right?
Oh, absolutely. And I think when you, ironically, I think it's taken me a while to learn the shortcut and implement because old habits die hard. Totally. But really pausing to allow myself to feel the emotions fully, to understand where they're coming from and figure out what is that thought what is my lizard brain? What is this side of me telling me that I am reacting to in this situation? And, I remember some very distinct moments where your wink practice, and I forget if you've discussed wink on a previous podcast.
Yeah, I offered it on like maybe the 4th podcast.
Oh, that's right.
Episode 4, you can actually find a copy of Wink if anyone's like, what's Wink?
Wink is an amazing tool to have in your toolbox of witnessing, investigating, normalizing, and comforting yourself through emotions. And let me tell you, whenever I have put Wink to full use, and by the time I get to the comforting piece of talking to myself as I would to a dear friend, which we all need to hear, if only we could all talk to ourselves that way more, and be gentler on ourselves, not so hard on ourselves. I think that would prevent a lot of conflicts or difficult emotions from arising in the relationship. So that would often de-escalate things for me.
Yeah. And also, what you're saying is being able to do that for yourself is what I've called like insourcing validation, right? So you're no longer needing it as much from outside. Doesn't mean you can't enjoy it when it comes to you, but you're not like grasping for it, right? And fighting for it, because you've learned how to kind of offer a lot of that to yourself.
Yes. It's like giving yourself a big hug, just giving yourself the acknowledgement that your feelings are valid, and not looking elsewhere for to know how to feel about something. And I've realized too, through working with you, how much that intersects in other areas of my life too, like looking for external validation at work or in other friendships and relationships. And through just, really choosing to believe some core thoughts that are true and feel a lot better than the ones that lead to outsourcing validation has been a huge shift. And really practicing those beliefs, which has taken some time, I think, for them, as you have this analogy of the superhighways in our brains, there's, when we think the same defeating thoughts over and over, they build stronger neural pathways, which can make it all the more necessary to create these new thoughts and new beliefs from those thoughts. So that's a shift that I think has been more subtle over time, but in pausing and reflecting before this interview with you, I really realized how much those thoughts have now become more core beliefs for me.
It's so beautiful. Yeah. What you're saying essentially is, to put it in a different language, is you've learned how to take so much ownership, so much responsibility for your emotions, for your experience, and for your interactions. But really, so much of that is what you're saying here is like shifting your beliefs away from those old ones that weren't working so well, right? But which were these super highways in your brain. They were the quickest, fastest route for your brain to go, right? And what you've done is the metaphor that I use is at first, when we start to create beliefs that actually are so much, they might be at least equally true, if not more true, but they're also so much more in service to feeling good about ourselves, to feeling good in our relationship. It's like we kind of have to bushwhack the first time we think one, right? We're like, whoa, and it feels a little uncomfortable. And the more we do it, the more it becomes a bigger road, and eventually it becomes the super highway instead of the old one, right? So you've been in that process, and sometimes it takes a little bit of time But when you realize like, whoa, I've got a road here instead of a bushwhacked little trail, right? Like that feels really good. So I'm curious, like, do you want to share one or two of those beliefs so people can kind of understand what we're talking about here?
Yeah. Well, first, I'm just picturing this, like, I've never used the word beautiful to describe a highway before, but I'm just picturing this like beautiful highway paved with like gold with these gorgeous flowers growing everywhere. And that's the kind of highway, I feel like we've been trying to build together, one that leads to more connection. And, of course, there's always going to be the bushwhacked side roads that are tempting to veer off into, but through some of those belief practices, it's been more of a steady journey along the more friendly highway. So some of the beliefs about myself that help build my confidence and security in myself, and ability as a partner.
Yeah.
So really that's believing that I am a clear communicator in my relationship. That's one thing that I had insecurity about, was my ability to clearly communicate how I was feeling, because we had this pattern of me sharing and that leading to disconnection and conflict. So really believing and knowing that I do understand my emotions and I can first communicate those to myself, and don't have to justify my emotions ever. I don't need that validation or approval of them. But so really it's can I communicate to myself and believe that I have that self-awareness and the ability to really be my own source of comfort.
I love that. I want to just offer another one that I know that we worked with a bunch, and actually segues kind of into my another question that I have is something around something like this, like conflict can actually bring us closer.
Yeah. And I think I remember probably, having some questions or doubts about that one that I'm not sure if I voiced too much on our sessions, but just really thinking it took me a while to get there. I think I had to get there incrementally, like, okay, conflict can be okay. That was like a first step. Conflict doesn't always have to lead down this bad direction, or be a sign that things are doomed. In fact, conflict is normal.
Totally.
But and then getting to that next step of how can conflict actually serve the relationship and bring us closer. That was like the revelatory moment, really getting to add beliefs to that. So I fully think that, and my partner and I have had some really beautiful conversations that have come out of conflict and grown deeper understanding when we are for each other. And like I mentioned, that conversation we finally had where we learned more about what we were, what was leading us to react to each other's response methods in conflict, and grow, that compassion for each other, as I said. So it's not so threatening when the other person has the response they have.
Right. And part of my hunch for you is that, and this is kind of true for most of us, is that when we start to relax a little bit, when we start to be like, okay, conflict doesn't necessarily mean like it's danger, relationship's over kind of thing, which is right. When we stop taking conflict as a sign of complete threat. The thing is, like, sidetrack here is there's still going to be a part of us, like as I talk about, like our animal creature or like our primal creature inside of us is always going to feel like conflict's a little bit of a threat. But if another part of us can have much more peace around conflict, right, can be like, okay, it's a normal and even healthy part of a relationship sometimes, right? And like having that kind of really like more sense of peace around it can allow you to then do what you're talking about, like to use conflict to actually have greater understanding of each other and get to know each other better, so that, you know, next conflict and beyond into the future, you're just going to be armed with so much more awareness and, yeah. And again, you're not going to be so charged around it. So you're going to be able to hold a space for each other better.
Totally. I remember you asking me one time, can you look forward to the next time you and your partner will have a conflict and, or be grateful for it. And I never thought I would feel that way compared to day one, but I really, and I told my partner that. I was like, guess what? I can't wait for us to have a conflict again. He's like, what? No, but I think, yeah, also just, you know, respecting, and that I've learned to respect his lizard brain as well, that he's not perfect, that he's doing the best he can to show up with compassion. And I've you know, learned more about, I think we've learned more about each other's lizard brains and what triggers each other. And because, yeah, like you were saying, we're going to have negative and positive emotions in life, and that will sometimes lead us into conflict. And when we can accept that, you know, like maybe up to 50% of the time we have sort of these negative thoughts, and nothing's wrong with that. But it's how we choose to respond to them. Are we going to layer on more negative emotions on top of those because we're ashamed of having them, or anxious about that, or feel insecure? That's where, you know, we find ourselves in trouble. But if we can just see how there's a lot of opportunity to love ourselves more in those moments, then we can feel more connected to our partners too. So that, I remember my partner also really, when we talked about that 50% sort of reality, I think that helped both of us have a deeper just sort of acceptance and appreciation for that, you know, the like fabric of emotions of our lives.
Totally. Yeah, that's beautiful. I love that. It is so powerful when we start to see that and accept that instead of fight against it. Like, oh no, another bad emotion. Oh no. Right.
Right.
Yeah. So good. So I want to ask a sort of slightly different question, although it's so related, which is, how has being sensitive, how has your sensitivity and really like doing this work, working through a lot of the stuff that sort of just naturally comes along with being sensitive, at least in this modern world, like how has that sensitivity and doing that work actually served your relationship?
Yeah. Well, I think one of the biggest ways has been, you know, being able to pick up on and find all the ways that I do love my partner, and find that he's an amazing partner, and that he's all of these things that I desire. And to allow those, you know, and to really share those with him in a supportive, loving way, by giving him that feedback or those compliments of how he's, you know, how I love him and how he's so great. And I think that's helped me feel more like I'm, you know, to use another Hannah expression, like leading in love in the relationship by finding the evidence for all of the ways that things are great, and not just keeping that to myself, but really expressing it in different ways in our relationship, so that he's feeling that loving way too. And I am so fortunate that my partner is he is an incredible human being on many levels. And he's also a highly sensitive person too.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something that I had my suspicions about. But we sort of confirmed through, through the beginning of my working with you, when he took the highly sensitive person, a sort of official test as well to sort of confirm that he is a highly sensitive person. And I have loved seeing how he brings that up now too of, I guess this is like my highly sensitive trait coming out. And it's been like a really neat thing to share together and support each other in being highly sensitive, and both the challenges of that, but the beautiful, lovely aspects of that, how it can make us learn to appreciate our sensitivity more, and all the ways that it creates more nuance, I think, in our daily lives and our relationships.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And I think, Lauren, you're such a, like, probably everybody who's listening can really feel your warmth in your heart and just your deep care. Like, it just really comes through so beautifully. And I know that, when we're out of the fear and insecurity and all that stuff, right, that we were talking about earlier, that so many of us find ourselves in, and then you found your way out of with my help, like, it's really what you've learned how to connect so beautifully to yourself, right? Like you said in the beginning, you've built this like different relationship with yourself, which is really like allowed you this huge capacity to connect to that beautiful heart that you have. And then that you bring that to your partner. And then of course that like brings that, more of that out in him too, and allows for you both to just like be yourselves. And so you're not always like seeing all the wrong things anymore. You're seeing all the beautiful things, the right things.
Yeah. Oh, thank you, Hannah. Don't make me cry again. It's working with you has helped me just really appreciate all of the ways that being a highly sensitive person can benefit your life and your relationship, and not just feel like it makes everything so intense and challenging. Being able to actually integrate these lessons and tools into your life to really utilize your sensitivity and harness it. It's obviously it's a work in progress. It's a lifelong journey to do that, because the world continues to be an overload, sensory overload for all of us. So really, like you said, tuning in to the ways that we can find beauty around us and in our relationships is a great way of finding, celebrating that sensitivity in our relationship.
Yeah, totally. And, I'm curious to sort of extending that. I know that these shifts that you've created inside of yourself have not only had a big impact, obviously, on your relationship, but they've also spread into lots of different aspects of your life, and bringing out the best parts of your sensitivity into other areas of your life. Just like in like just a few, like a minute, do you want to share about that? Like how these changes in you have impacted other parts of your life?
Yeah, I would love to. So one of the things that I've been really pondering and reflecting on is feeling more heart-centered in my work. And it's allowed me to make some, career choices that I think are in alignment in that sense.
Like what you shared with me right before.
Yeah, exactly. Which
powerful decision.
Felt very powerful. I essentially turned down an opportunity that old me would have probably jumped on, because it's sort of a clear, logical, I like to use that word, step up. But, going up the ladder, however, my internal compass and my heart just really told me it's not the direction I'm heading in, and it's very similar to sort of what I'm currently doing, which I'm finding myself just asking all these questions about what do I really want to do in the world that is aligned with the things that I desire, about helping the planet, helping others, and doing that in a way that is fun and joyful and aligned, and doesn't feel like it's, again, doing what I think others expect of me, or doing what is seeking there's a lot of seeking external validation in my job too. So that the work we've been doing in my romantic relationship has really created a beautiful sort of translation into other aspects of my life. And so thank you for that, Hannah. It's almost turned into career coaching.
I know. I love it. But it's really the same thing. I mean, I think it's allowed you the courage and the belief in yourself, the trust in yourself, and the freedom from seeking that external, validation, so that really, because you're so beautifully able to internally validate now, like you are giving yourself permission to actually follow your heart, to follow what you really want. And actually, probably ultimately, I'm just going to guess here, but like that actually will make a bigger impact on the world.
Thank you. I sure hope so.
Yeah, because you have so many of us highly sensitive people, you have such beautiful gifts to offer the world. And where they are now is like great, but like following what you're being called towards and allowing yourself to follow that is in my belief that's going to be like so powerful for the world, not just for you. So yeah, I love seeing that. And I think I've also seen a lot of shifts in other relationships in your life too, and it's just been like beautiful to watch all of that kind of like I want to say like shifting upwards, like shifting towards the better, all kind of at once. I loved watching that. Yeah.
Thank you, Hannah. I just wanted to say in response to something you just said about, all of the sensitive people in the world. And if we all sort of harnessed our sensitivity more, I think a lot of us probably feel like outcasts in some regard, or like our traits don't necessarily mesh well with modern society and how it really values strong extroversion and aggression and some of these more the masculine or patriarchal traits. But so many of us, like you, are serving as this beautiful bridge for women to really embody their sensitivity and ultimately make the kind of impact in the relationships and in the world that we truly need. As I really think that this is like a world changing type of work that you do, because if I really imagine this beautiful future where if people were more in alignment with their hearts and their sensitive traits, that we would be in harmony more with each other and with the planet and nature. So
I totally agree.
Yeah. Pretty lofty ending of things, but that's how you make me feel.
I love hearing that from you so much, because that's what I see for I see us as sensitive love warriors, and, bringing our gifts to the world, like, really will create a sea change. But it starts inside of us. And again, you're like such a beautiful, beautiful example. I'm so happy that others are able to hear your story right now and be inspired by it. So powerful. I have one final question for you, Lauren, which is kind of a funny question, but I was looking back before we hopped on at our very first time we connected on our consult call. And one of the things that you shared with me, that you were hesitating doing the coaching work. I mean, I think it's very normal to have fears and be worried about, like, well, what if this or what if that? Totally normal to be nervous about working with a coach, right? But one of the funny things was you were like, I really wanted to get a new area rug. And so I'm curious, like, was doing this coaching work together worth holding off on that new area rug so that you could, hire?
Oh my gosh. I had a suspicion about what you were going to bring up. And I'm just laughing so much because, Hannah, I haven't told you yet, but I also we got a new area rug recently. So you can have it all.
I feel like you didn't. Yeah. Go ahead. So you actually got it too? That's amazing.
Yeah, that's the funny thing. I thought I was having to choose between life-changing coaching work with Hannah or getting a new area rug, which sounds a little ridiculous. Hopefully everyone would choose the coaching with Hannah. But but that really, I remember back to then too, being hesitant about spending spending money on myself in this way, investing in myself. I think it made me, beyond the area rug, the superficial level, it was really not feeling worthy of this investment in myself. Also because I didn't have a confident outlook of where it would get me. I mean, as much as I was drawn to your work because of what the other testimonials I had heard, and I knew that it would lead me in a great direction. But I felt, and probably have my own hangups around money and spending money that I needed to get through, which clearly I have to some degree since we bought the nice area rug as well. But yeah, I'm just so. I thought you asked me in a really respectful, patient, understanding way, a series of questions on our first call that helped me think about this work in the context of my life and understanding the hangups I had around money. And now looking back, it seems a bit ridiculous to me that was like that almost prevented me from working with you. And I'm just so grateful that I never felt pressured, but I really felt encouraged to imagine what the possibilities would be if I took the leap. And I'm so grateful that I did, and so worth any investment. Your work is invaluable.
Yeah. And I'm so glad you were willing to kind of take that leap and sort of suspend really what a lot of that is the self-doubt, right? Like, not sure you could do it, like worrying if it's like, well, if it's going to be worth the money, because what if you don't see improvement, right? Mm-hmm. But like you, like being willing to be like, all right, I'm going to do this for myself. I'm going to like trust myself just enough and trust Hannah just enough to like take the leap, and, look where it's got you. And I also just want to say, like, I'm so grateful that you did, because like, it's brought you here. It's going to continue to have impact in your relationship and out into the world more. And even just like you coming to this point where you're sharing your story with people here on this podcast is like,
this is earth shattering. Yeah. This is definitely not where I imagined we would end up. So it has exceeded my expectations, and you've helped me exceed my own expectations. And I really sincerely wish this for every woman out there, especially all of the highly sensitive women. I hope you will feel curious at minimum, or encouraged to get in touch with Hannah if you don't already work with her, and know that it is just an incredible journey you will be going on, and you will feel so proud of yourself about the work that you're going to do and the change that you are going to create in your own life. So that would be, thank you for setting up, Hannah, my one main hope for other women.
Lauren, thank you so much. It's my pleasure to do this. So it's been such a beautiful joy supporting you and supporting other women and making these changes. So thank you for giving testimony to that. It's so beautiful to hear. And yeah, thank you so much for sharing this with us. I know it can feel a little vulnerable, but what a bright light you are.
Thank you. I love you. I love everything that you are doing in the world, and I wish you could see the big smile on my face. Wish I could give you a big hug right now.
Yeah, a little virtual hug.
Sending big virtual hugs your way, and to everyone out there. Thank you, Hannah.
Thank you, Lauren. If this episode inspired you or encouraged you or brought you hope, it would mean a lot to me if you left a rating and review on Apple Podcasts. When you do so, it actually helps bring this podcast to more women who are really looking for this kind of support and could really use more love in their lives and in their marriages. So please go ahead and hit subscribe if you haven't already, and rate and review this podcast. And if you're interested in reaching out to me, please know I am here for you. You can reach me by emailing me at hannah@lifeisworthloving.com, or go over to my website, lifeisworthloving.com, and I will be really happy to hear from you. Have a great week and be oh so well.